numbers are starting to slow down. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you so much for joining us and welcome to today's webinar, The Productivity Paradox, the Impact of Success Narratives on Gen Z. My name is Jackie Zimmerman and I'm the Public Education Partnerships and E-Learning Manager. And I am joined by another Jackie, a wonderful Jackie, our Manager of Peer and Youth Advocacy, as we co-host and moderate today's session. I have just a few notes for everyone before I hand it over to Jackie and our amazing speakers for today. This webinar is being recorded and will be emailed out to all registrants within 1 week, along with any resources that are shared by our panelists during today's session. We currently do not offer CEUs, but if you would like to request a certificate of attendance, I have a form you can fill out to request one of those. I'll post the link to that in the chat here shortly, and that will also be included in your follow-up email if you're not able to get it from the chat today. Like I said, your cameras are automatically off, your mics are muted. That's how they'll stay throughout today's session. But please feel free to use the chat to ask questions, make comments, share resources. We will have some time, hopefully at the end, to take a few questions from the audience. So feel free to post those throughout the session. We'll be collecting those and then have some time to go through them at the end. So I will now hand it over to Jackie and our panelists to kick us off with discussion.
Thank you so much for that introduction. Yes, I'm the other Jackie, Jackie Manhivar, and I'm the Manager of Peer and Youth Advocacy here at MHA. And one of the more crucial parts of my role is I get the privilege to work with our Young Leaders Council. MHA's Young Leaders Council invites 10 young people ages 18 to 25 from across the country to participate in a 6-month leadership program. And these are young people who are selected because they filled gaps in mental health resources and supports in their own communities. So they're incredible leaders in their own right, and I'm extremely privileged to get to work with them. Our panelists today are members of this year's Young Leaders Council. So before we dive into it, I'd love to set the stage a little bit for this webinar. The main focus of this webinar will be a discussion on the sort of pursuit of success in our increasingly fast-paced, success-driven, technology-driven world, particularly as a young person and the impacts that can have on mental health. It's a topic that's close to a lot of people's heart, including our panelists today. As you can tell, you know, they were they're part of a cohort of 10 selected among hundreds, so it comes at no surprise that this kind of high achievement might be something that they're quite familiar with and the pressures that come with it. So yeah, join us today as we try to gain some broader understanding on this quest for success in the digital age. And with that, I'm going to introduce you to our panelists, let them say hi, and know a little bit more about them, starting with Keegan.
Hello, everyone. My name is Keegan Lee. I am an undergraduate first-year student at UNC Chapel Hill. Go Heels. I am on the Youth Leadership Councils of Mental Health America and the American Academy of Pediatrics. I have been in this space for about 6 years, and it really started in the midst of the pandemic when I found my own mental health start to decline because I was gravitating so much toward my phone. And so my sweet spot is really social media's impact on our brain development and technology's impact on human behavior. And so I've done a lot of work with that and have developed a international curriculum for schools, for parents and educators to use to kind of help young people navigate the challenges of our digital world and help to create a more humane lifestyle as we continue to emerge in the future.
Thank you, Keegan. I'm going to pass it along to Kaisar.
Hi, my name is Kaisar. I use they, them pronouns. I am an undergraduate student at Amherst College, currently studying psychology, as well as a unique major called Law, Jurisprudence, and Social Thought. In addition to being a member of the Youth Leader Council for Mental Health America, I am an intern at the Institute for Wellbeing in Law, which is a national organization that is dedicated towards spearheading the movement within law to help bolster the mental health of professionals who are highly at risk for mental health concerns. In addition, I've done work with the National Alliance on Mental Illness, but based in my home state of New Hampshire, as well as based in my current state of Massachusetts. Just working with these different organizations, working on harm reduction, especially as it pertains to marginalized communities. I highly identify with my ethnic heritage as a Kazakh American, and I have, for this reason, a very strong focus on intersectionality as it pertains to the mental health movement. And it is my opinion that, and my strong conviction, that we must be careful of the we must be careful to include the voices of people from marginalized backgrounds, lest our movement for social well-being will leave out some critically important voices. I'm very excited to be joining you all today, and thank you for taking the time to hear us out.
Thank you so much. All right, and we're gonna round it out with Anastasia.
Hello, everyone. I'm Anastasia Early. I use she or they pronouns, and I'm from Garnet Valley, Pennsylvania, and am currently attending Swarthmore College, also in Pennsylvania. So I'm not too far from home right now, where I am studying neuroscience and environmental studies on a supposed pre-med track with hopes of going into psychiatry. I'm really interested in doing research in stigma reduction, specifically mental health stigma reduction and treatment advancement. I am very passionate about advocating for my own personal experiences and uplifting those of others, and using peer specialists and peers as a part of the support and treatment team for those undergoing treatment. And in general, I'm also very passionate about helping to reduce the stigma of the intersection between mental health and athletics. I am also an athlete at my school on the swim and track team here, and it is still heavily stigmatized to speak out about your experiences, especially in athletics where mental grit is seen as a strength. I am currently also a volunteer at Mental Health Partnerships in Philadelphia, which is a nonprofit that works to really push the peer support-driven support narrative and also care. Also a campus captain for the Hidden Opponent, which is a nonprofit organization that works to decrease the stigma in athletics. And I also am working at my school within our specific student-led and run mental health group called Speak to Swatties, where we have podcasts, newsletters, and a whole bunch of other things. We currently released a podcast, or it's coming out soon, kind of about navigating friendships at the school. And we are also currently working on starting peer support programs at our school. So that's really exciting. But I'm very passionate about these different things, and I'm really excited to be here today to share my experiences and talk among some very lovely people.
Thank you all so much. Thank you for sharing and for lending us your expertise today. Like I said earlier, it comes at no surprise that the folks in this webinar with us today, when we first started to conceptualize this webinar as a group, what we kept circling around was the sort of stress that everyone was feeling amid all of the things that they were doing and all these achievements. So I think it's a very apt and relevant perspective to share today. And thank you all for joining us today, those of you in the audience listening along. So we're going to go ahead and dive in and get started with our questions for our panelists. Just to start, so one of the unique POVs we have here is y'all being a part of Gen Z, right? Academic and social pressure has always been a challenge for young people, no matter their generation. But I think it's worth zooming in on the sort of unique challenges that students face today in a world that's shaped by technology and innovating relentlessly. So how does technology affect your ability to maintain presence inside and outside the classroom?
I can go first. I think this is obviously something that I'm very passionate about, and I think it's so important to see the beauty of both living in a highly digital world, but it's important to see the flip side of that coin as well. And so I think in the classroom, technology can be such an incredible feature that can allow students to learn and retain information and do so in a very creative and innovative way, which is the way that specifically Generation Z's minds are structured. We're very innovative. We like tangibility. And so technology is incredible for that. But however, I've seen it in college, I've seen it in high school, I've seen it among several different schools. The distraction of technology and how it may interfere with our ability to not only learn, but collaborate with each other in the classroom. Because in regards to participation, in regards to collaboration, it can be very easy to hide behind the screen and not engage in person communication. And so I feel like it is very important to see both sides of that. But in my life, technology, for the most part, has served as a very important tool that we need to innovate. However, it is also very apparent that it is it has the power to divide and fracture attention among students, among young people, and that is very scary if people do not practice conscious awareness.
Yeah, on those lines, thank you, Keegan, of conscious awareness. Something that I find is getting distracted within my classes and within my academic environment, because the reality of the current generation is that your attention is never in one place at any given moment. It's constantly dispersed. But this doesn't extend for me only within the classroom. It extends to me in all other facets of my life, because I could receive a grade posting at any given moment of the day. I could receive a new assignment via email at any given point in the day. And this intersects with my jobs and with my different work, and just the perception of constantly being on that comes with a modern day, constantly being available towards kind of interruptions, has really hindered my ability to maintain presence within some of my most valuable relationships. And I find that to be, at least personally, the most difficult part in maintaining attention and maintaining presence with the modern advent and modern perceptions of technology.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point of both. It goes both ways about the flood of information that we're receiving, but also the need to be constantly connected to one another and feel like you're constantly available to the people in your life, that you're just a text away. And so that adds a different layer of pressure and like fractured attention.
Yeah, I really agree with that. And I know for me personally, I really like having my own downtime and time to myself to kind of like recharge and rejuvenate. And if I'm constantly getting notifications on the side, or um, I'm constantly being bombarded by social media or other kinds of emails and other kinds of apps that are oriented like that, it's harder for me to take that time for myself. But that's definitely one aspect of outside the classroom. I also definitely want to touch on some of the ways that technology affects our ability to maintain presence within the classroom. So as someone with ADHD, paying attention in class is very much hard to do just in general. So having the increased distractions of people on their devices and getting notifications on emails and other things can be really distracting for me. So I tend to use like a pen and paper when I'm taking notes, because that's the best way for me to take notes and for me to be present in the class. But I also recognize that technology works really great for some people, especially if they're faster typers. But also I know that, technology also has some really great benefits of, if I do miss something during the lecture because my mind wanders for a bit, or something happens and I can't really pay attention for the full time, the ability for lectures to be recorded sometimes and being able to access those after the fact definitely helps me kind of make sure I'm gathering all the content and allowing me to like maybe I wasn't able to be totally present in class, but like being able to make sure I wasn't missing anything super important. So I think that's another really important aspect of technology, like in the classroom and out of the classroom. And in addition, just like if there are some days where going into a large classroom makes me very anxious, or, I have to miss something because I have sports or something similar to that, and I can't be in class, also having the ability um, to have those like lecture being recorded is really great. But there are some gives and takes that I recognize, but I think that there's some really great aspects to having that ability of technology being used in the classroom personally and by the professor or teacher, but also like on the outside of the classroom. I think that it also can increase and intensify the academic and social pressures surrounding like how well you're doing, and kind of feeling like there's that need to constantly balance this academic excellence and this image that you have of yourself online. And yeah, I think that there's definitely some gives and takes with technology inside and outside of the classroom.
Yeah, thank you so much for reminding us of that nuance, right? That technology is not wholly negative or wholly helpful, that it can be both at once. And especially when we're thinking about neurodiversity in the ways that people learn, their learning styles, their communication styles, technology can hinder and can harm. So yeah, a great reminder. Thank you. Great, we'll move on to our next question. So one thing we'd love to talk about is about success, right? That's kind of the focus of this discussion. And moreover, the sort of societal narratives of success that we may have grown up hearing, or whether that's from our loved ones or in pop culture or among our peers. And I'd love to explore a little more about these narratives because they can either lift us up or weigh us down. So I'd love to hear about your definitions of success and maybe how those definitions have changed over time, right? How do we redefine success to encourage mental health and well-being and authentic personal growth?
Yeah, so I love this question because I have a very personal relationship with this question. A long time ago, I used to associate success in school with numbers, getting the A's, getting, the highest scores. That was what I associated my worth with. And if I didn't get a certain grade, it was like a little subtle jab. And it really would have an effect on you. The thing about college, as a first year in college, what I've seen is that grades aren't so much inflated as they were in high school. And grades they're important, but there's so much more to education than the numbers. And it really comes down to being able to retain the information by associating meaning with the information and not just remembering the material just so you can get an A in the class. And so um, at my school, we really emphasize the beauty of an interdisciplinary education. And so, even if you are an English major, you are required to take classes in mathematics and physics. And if you're a physics major, you're required to take classes in English so that when you graduate college, you're a more well rounded human and you're going into the workforce with multiple disciplines. And that is really what learning and knowledge is about, and not so much the grade and the outcome. And I think it's important to understand that I'm not trying to downgrade an academically rigorous environment. I think that that is important because it challenges us. And I think there are times to have tests. I think there are times to have exams. But I think it's important to design our education system in a way that really emphasizes our ability to make sense of the information so that we can use it to leave our legacy in this world, and not be so focused on how the numbers demonstrate our knowledge.
That's a really great point, Keegan, especially talking about how we are more than the numbers that we typically associate as determining our value. For me, my definition of success is very much determined by my own mental health journey. And what I come to view success as is being an active participant in my own life. So given my experiences growing up and given my experiences at the intersection of my cultural identity, there have been a lot of moments, especially throughout college, now that I'm not living at home or I'm living so far separate from the experiences that make me me, where my brain is somewhere completely different in any given moment. And this can be during class, this can be during just spending time with my friends, but I have such a hard time just not getting caught up on things in the past. And my particular form of neurodivergence comes with a lot of rumination. And I feel like that's something that I very much experience to a heightened extent in my day-to-day life. But what I've been working on is maintaining presence. I've been working on actively participating in my moment-to-moment experience. This is my definition of success, because there's a lot here to enjoy. There's a lot of things that I'm having a lot of fun with. I'm so thankful to be in the position that I am in my life right now, and I don't want to miss out on it. I want to participate in it and have fun with it while I can. I know that's not really related to school on the surface level, but this manifests itself into my academics and my extracurriculars, and that when I'm there, I'm there. I really try to bring my full authentic self uninhibited by the experiences of the past. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And a reminder for everyone, I think success is so often measured as this like long-term goal of like what you achieve over the span of a lifetime, right? But I think remembering that success can look like a moment, a minute in time in which you're fully present and appreciating and living in that moment. So I think it's a helpful reminder for everyone.
Yeah, thank you, Jackie, so much for bringing that part up, because I was going to talk about something similar, just kind of saying how our definition of success really can widely vary from person to person and change really throughout our life and throughout different experiences and even day to day, right? And I think for me, initially success was very much equated to like the traditional markers of, you know, academic success. So for me, success when I was in high school was, you know, getting the best grades I could, or trying to be the fastest on the team and trying to be the smartest in the room, because that's how I was told to define success. That was how I was told in my family to define success. Like, if you get this great grade, if you do this well in a sport, you know, you're successful. We're proud of you, and you're successful. But I think that as I've kind of gotten older, and now I'm a junior in college, and after taking a leave of absence from school for my mental health, I've kind of taken more of a holistic view of success, and that also includes for me factors of mental health and well-being and my own personal growth. So I think for me, one of my key markers of success is just getting through a day and being intentional about each and everything I'm doing. You know, it could be watching TV, it could be going on a walk, but like in that moment, I'm intentional about what I'm doing, and I'm trying to be present in that moment. And I think that that's a really huge marker of success for me just in everyday life. And it also allows me to have days where, you know, it's okay for me to like kind of just sit and have a day where I'm just taking care of myself, as long as like that's the intent of it, and I'm not allowing my mind to wander other places and go anywhere else other than where it needs to be in that moment. Because I think our mind has the ability to kind of get disconnected from our body in a physical moment, and it sometimes can leave our physical presence. And I feel like that also can be really complicated and difficult. But I think for me, like my success also changes from day to day. Like my success does change based off of like where I am in my mental health journey, and like what month it is, or how I'm doing, like how I am in that moment, and if I'm going through medication changes, and if I'm navigating new health changes, and just trying to be the best version of myself, and work within my own limitations. That's what success is for me as well. And you know, tiny wins of like being a very cute chipmunk in the woods when I'm on a walk, like that's success for me, because that is allowing myself to have that happiness and that win of the day. And I think that this kind of also extrapolates to like my larger academic and life goals. Like for me, success at the end of the day is to be happy and to be, you know, happy about the version of myself that I see. And I think that there are always like different ways to define my success. And yeah, I don't know. I've noticed a huge shift in how I define success from like when I was in high school to like where I am in college now. And now I'm less focused on how well I'm doing in a class based off of the grade, and I'm more focused on that like course mastery and like trying to have more open communication with my professors and trying to just put my best foot forward. And I think that, you know, I like navigating the college atmosphere with neurodivergence is very difficult. So like I noticed that like my definitions of success might not be very similar to a lot of other people's, but it's the definition that works best for me and allows me to do what I want to do each day. So
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is you're touching on a thought that this group has floated around before, this idea of success being relativistic rather than essentialistic, right? That it's different for each person, each person's circumstances and limitations at times, and that it shouldn't be this one size fits all view of what makes a person successful or not. Although, you know, to address the elephant in the room, it's hard to do that in a world that's increasingly hyper global and hyper connected, largely due to the impact of social media and technology, right? So I'd love to hear a little bit more about how technology and social media affect what you perceive to be a success, particularly within the context of education, but not strictly. And moreover, what strategies do you have for maintaining a healthy relationship with that? Maybe some actionable things that other young people in a similar position might do to make sure that they have a healthy relationship with their goals while still striving for success.
I think in regards to the social world that we live in, and specifically within Generation Z, we find that popularity, you know, on social media and in person is very prevalent. But I think it's important to recognize the two different types of popularity: likability and then status. And I think that in this world that we live in, we can get so caught up with status and becoming someone that, you know, gets all the likes on the post or has the highest amount of followers, and in turn feeling like we have to follow those types of people, because they seem like they have a large following. But focusing more on likability and seeing the success in that, and turning to people who have the ability to talk with all different types of people from all different types, from all different walks of life, is so fulfilling and such a beautiful aspect of a person. And so it can be so easy to lose that focus. And especially within Gen Z, I think we need to focus more on listening to each other and looking at each other in a way that appreciates all of our differences and all of our backgrounds, instead of focusing on uh, the status and different things. Because I was having this conversation with one of my friends the other day, and she's obviously she's very accomplished, very driven, but she said every time someone introduces her, they always talk about, you know, what she's done, like her highest accomplishments, which is great. But she said, no, I want to be introduced in a way that shows why I did those accomplishments, why I did those in the first place. I want to talk about what I'm passionate about. With the things that I've done, you know, that's a later conversation. But why did I do these? This is who I am. And so sometimes people may see just the accomplishments, and think, oh, wow, that's, you know, this person's really high status. They've done all these incredible things. But what was really the intention behind these goals that they had, and how long did they work for them, and what was that journey like. And so I think that there's that potential for that type of human interaction.
Yeah, thank you for grounding us in that framing. I think that's really important, even here, like in these discussions, like y'all are obviously very accomplished folks and your expertise is tremendous. And at the same time, like there is a real heart to that. There's a core to that that I think needs to be recognized as well. And I also love what you're saying about how obviously we know that it's important in terms of self-worth to be able to find the value in yourself and be able to find that find that value for yourself in yourself. But sometimes that can be hard, right? So practicing with other people, right? Like finding the value in the folks who don't have thousands of likes on Instagram and finding that and practicing that to sort of like build that muscle up. I really like that.
Yeah, I agree. That was really well said, Keegan, talking about how with the advent of social media, we spend a lot of time cultivating our surface level. We spend a lot of time cultivating how we appear to others, how we can deliver some sort of concise summary of who we are in terms of our accomplishments. And because of this, we miss out on such invaluable connection. We miss out on that why, as you're talking about. I feel as though for me, missing out on this why, constantly viewing myself in terms of that surface level and others in terms of that surface level really decreases the intrinsic motivation I had towards what I do to begin with. Because when I accomplish something that I'm very proud of, that comes from a place deep within me that is a culmination of my experiences, is a culmination of who I am and what brought me to this point. And people don't see that. Instead, people see this as an accomplishment, and then that becomes their perception of me. And when technology has it such that we are only perceptive towards the surface experiences of those who are valuable towards us, the deeper elements go forgotten. It's very difficult to maintain what drives me, to maintain what keeps me going when it doesn't seem like that matters, when it only seems like whatever I could put on my resume matters. And I just wish that we get to a point where we realize that our interpersonal human connection on the basis of what makes you you is more meaningful than any like LinkedIn post that you can make. So yeah, that's my perspective.
I really appreciate that, Kesar. And I was asked this question the other day about if the question was, what is something that lights you up inside that you wouldn't put on your resume? And I thought that was really powerful because it emphasizes, our generation and this status generation that we live in. Um, and I said, handwritten letter writing, it's something so vulnerable and something so, simple, but there's something so personal about it, seeing your name written down, seeing the person's handwriting. They had to literally physically put, everything together with their two hands. There's something so vulnerable about that. And, whether that's giving them or receiving them, it's not a text, it's not an email, it's not a digital form of communication, and it's an art form. And so that's something that I would not put on my resume, although it should be normalized that should be on there. Maybe I'll add that, but I think that's a question that I've asked several of my peers, and it's really unfortunate because so many of them have not been able to answer that question. And so it's just something to think about.
Yeah. So for me, I have an interesting relationship with technology and social media. Like I think that, there is this idea where people are often putting their idealized versions of themselves and always posting about their accomplishments, which is really great. And it's great to see that. But at the same time, sometimes it can provide those unrealistic comparisons. And by seeing these achievements of peers or even influencers, it really, it almost makes me feel like it's minimizing all the accomplishments that I've set out to do and like all the things that I've been able to do. So I think that, social media has this kind of ability to be super unhealthy depending on how you use it. And I think that for me, I personally try not to use social media all too much. Like um, I try not to post something seeking validation. Like before I post something, I'm always thinking like, what is the purpose of me posting this? Like, am I looking for someone to like this or comment this? Am I looking for like acceptance or something? And if I'm not, if I'm just posting something for myself, then I allow myself to post it. And I try not to mindlessly scroll through Instagram, and I try not to use it to fill time. And I try not to, if I'm feeling anxious in social settings, I try not to use it as a crutch, and I try to just be present in the moment. So I've like worked really hard to establish some intentional habits and strategies of maintaining my relationship with social media, because I do think it can be super beneficial to stay socially connected with some people that I don't get to see as often. Like I recently studied abroad in Australia, so I have some friends that, are quite a bit away. So it's nice to be able to see what they're up to. And but it's also nice to not spend time on social media. So it's like also recognizing like what's the best way I can stay connected to the people that I super care about, and making those connections and relationships meaningful. And I think that that's another thing that I've been more intentional and selective about. Like I only use certain kinds of social media. Like I really only like to use Instagram, and I use that not just for my account, but also for a personal experience, mental health related account, because I think that also like there's a really great opportunity to educate people that are still, very much using technology a lot. And it's really great to have some educational content like getting posted out there about things that I'm passionate about. But I am very mindful of like, I don't have TikTok because I know that I would just, endlessly scroll through a feed for hours and hours. And I would feel empty after that, because with each little snippet of video, I'm getting that instant gratification and dopamine. And then I feel very much not like myself afterwards. And I also am the same with like Snapchat. I don't use that because if I really want to talk to this person, I don't want to send them a picture of my face. I want to ask how they are. And I mean, these are just my personal opinions. I think that like everyone has different relationships with different apps, but like for me, kind of like filtering out the ones that I've seen as kind of more as like time fillers and like crutches. I've kind of worked more to like filter those out of my usage, and kind of been more intentional about how I'm using social media. Like I always also try to not use it in the beginning of the day and the end of the day. I save the end of the day for, whether it be like like meditating or like doing some like gratitude before I go to bed, or doing something like making jewelry, because I have a lot of fun doing that and kind of doing something with my hands instead of using my mind if I'm like really looking for that like mindless aspect, like doing something that gets me a step away from technology. And in the mornings, like I try to shape my day and be really intentional about what I'm doing. So I don't want to wake up and instantly look through my feed. I like to wake up and kind of, like look outside, look at the sun, like kind of do my stretches in the morning, kind of center myself and kind of like shape the way I want my day to look. Because I also know that like I mean, these are all things that I've been working on over time, because I used to do other things that set me up very poorly for the day. So like I used to have days where I would be like, wow, I just spent 3 hours in bed scrolling through Instagram or something. And I noticed that that was really unhealthy. So like I've been super intentional about implementing some things that are kind of more healthy for me at least. And yeah, I also am someone who um yeah, I also like to go camping and stuff. So like I like to do my own digital detoxes and step away and step back from things for a bit, because I think that like when I find myself on social media more than often, I feel this pressure of feeling like, oh, I haven't talked to this friend enough, or I haven't done this enough, and like all these other emotions that I'm experiencing that like maybe I haven't like been in contact with someone as much as I wanted to, but that's okay. And realizing that through social media and then constantly feeling that over and over again isn't always super healthy for me. So like I am very big about like having big technology detoxes and and those have been like super beneficial for me over time. And those are just like some of the strategies I use for like maintaining that healthy relationship with technology and social media, especially because like my definition of success, if it, with it being so much like being intentional about my day, like knowing that if I was on social media, like mindlessly scrolling, that wouldn't really fit into my version of success. So yeah, so those are just some of the strategies that I utilize and have found that work really well for me.
Yeah, that's great. I love how this all ties into that conversation we were having earlier about mindfulness and presence. And I think that's great. Even if you maybe can't, like as a like just a person watching this, right? If you're thinking like a detox sounds really scary to do something that like that large, like even just that strategy you mentioned of when you're on your phone and you go to start scrolling, just asking yourself, why am I doing this? Why am I posting this? Why am I consuming this? And if the answer is something you're comfortable with, you can continue to scroll. It's about that intentionality though, to really think before you do. So thank you for those strategies. They're super helpful. Um, I know that this has been a great conversation for fostering more understanding of sort of the perspective of young people in this space, but recognizing that a lot of the folks listening might be mentors to young people, whether that's in a professional role as like a coach or a teacher, or something more informal, a parent, or just a friend or guardian. Um, I'd love to get your thoughts on how mentors can best support young people as it relates to these ideas we've been talking about measuring and pursuing success. What can they do to help promote mental health and well-being while still encouraging folks to strive for achievement and growth?
I think I think it's so important, and I think that there's such power in intergenerational force and older generations looking down on younger generations and younger generations looking up and helping each other. And I think it's important to recognize this digital divide and how older generations may not be able to understand the environment that Generation Z is growing up in, but we have seen just how much they care and how much effort they are putting into wanting to understand. And so I think that it's really hard to weigh the responsibilities of our own responsibility to grow in a digital world or to maintain mental health, and also the tech industry's responsibility to help us. And so that's a struggle, but I think that it's really important that mentors and adults listen. I mean, it's so simple, but that is a really important skill, and understand the signs of mental health conditions, understanding the signs of addiction, with like withdrawal and anticipation and escapism, and seeing that, and just really being intentional about how the world that we're growing up in might continue to shape the way we communicate and connect, because parents and educators are incredible. They are incredible agents of socialization, and from a very early age have the power to influence how children grow and interact with each other. Like, for example, if they're always spending time on a tablet and that's being used as a pacifier, they're not going to have that crucial time for self-reflection that we were talking about, and that time to just be and develop a high tolerance for just boredom and just being immersed in the world that we live in. And at that age, throughout adolescence, throughout our entire life, being still and being free of stimulation is where true ideas are born. And so I feel like that if we continue to emphasize that mental health is important, we need to take a break. Then that way we are able to do our academics and do well and perform well. And so there's something that a mentor told me a couple weeks ago. She said, "You are in this mindset of you need to work in order to rest." But then she said, but you really need to emphasize the importance of resting so that you can do your most meaningful work. And so I think that that's where that point of maintaining and the importance of academic rigor you have to be able to do that. You have to be able to challenge yourself and think critically about concepts and associate meanings with them only if you are in the right mindset to do so, and if you are giving yourself the time to decompress and to relax. And so I think that adults have done a really great job of recognizing that. But I think that we need to continue to show that.
Yeah, absolutely. Two threads I'd like to pull from that. One is I think it's so important to recognize what you're saying about how adults are in a lot of ways like the sort of blueprint and foundational source of knowledge for young people growing up on how we communicate, how we interact with the world. And part of that is also how adults interact with one another, interact with technology, interact with their own perception of success, right? So I think sometimes it's about modeling the kind of behavior that is healthy, right? It's not mindlessly like if as a like a mentor in someone's life, if you're doing like you're saying, if you feel like you need to work before you rest, like what is that showing to the young person in your life? What behavior is that modeling? So recognize how your own actions can be reflected in others. And I'm sure there was another one, but I've it's since escaped my mind, so I'm gonna give some more space to our panelists.
That's such an excellent point, touching on how actions speak larger than words. I know that growing up, I saw mentors who I could tell really cared about me, advocating for a redefinition of my own prioritization of success. But then I saw them viewing success in this very essentialistic, one-dimensional way for their own selves. And that's how I came to view my version of success. Because when you're at that age, when you're growing up, you model your actions after what the people above you do. So in the most sincere way I can muster, the most sincere request, I ask the older generation to not reinforce the essentialist success narrative. Rather, create an environment in which young people can discover what their own version of success is. It is up to those who come before us to lay the template, the generational schema through which young people can view success. And with this power comes an ability to really positively shape our own perceptions of what is meaningful to us. There have been invaluable mentors in my life who the most meaningful experiences I've had was them being willing to show emotional vulnerability, was them being willing to take a moment and say, I actually can't do my work right now. I can't. It's so much more valuable for me to take time for myself, or for me to take time for my family, or for me to take time to attend to this experience that has been really bothering me. And that is just so valuable because that lays a framework for how I can view myself. How can I shape what my future is in a productive manner, lest if I do not have visions of the future manifested within adults that can guide the way. Thank you.
Yeah, I wanted to emphasize some things that some of the other panelists said, but the setting a positive example and just being kind of like that template of a role model, and demonstrating like how to live a balanced and healthy lifestyle. So like we see something and we see an example to know that it's possible, to know that, you're not completely encompassed in work, and being able to show that it's still possible to excel in the multiple areas of life without compromising their well-being and other things related to that. And I also think this is another huge aspect, is like mentors are great, but also being able to have mentors that you can personally identify with. So whether it be like a woman in science or a queer professor, or this is more of a call out towards like bureaucracy and like towards implementing more diversity for like mentors, but like that kind of diversity and differences in the different mentors and role models we have in our life really, like, it's so impactful and influential to like academic success and mental health. Like I just think that having that balanced approach, it's the best way to help support us, honestly, in my opinion. And I think another aspect is the ability, like, to once you find a mentor that you super identify with, like having a relationship where you guys can be authentic with each other and being able to emphasize like the personal experiences that you both have, and being able to just like listen and understand. And like maybe you didn't have the same exact experience, but maybe you have a brother or a sibling or a friend that is going through something similar, and not trying to like minimize the person's experience, but like trying to relate to the student without um overstepping and like dismissing what they're saying. And I have a really great mentor who I had mentioned this past summer, like I was going through a lot of changes with medications, and it was making it very difficult for me to do my research work in a lab. And I had been upfront with my mentor about this, and she was just so fantastic and so understanding, and was sharing like some of the experiences that she had known to be successful about her partner. And like that was also so helpful to just hear more insight about someone who also has a similar condition and is living in that, like, with that condition and still being successful in daily life. And I think that also emphasizes like being accommodating and normalizing those conversations with students um and people in general, to kind of address like the unique challenges that they're facing. And I think that the biggest thing I want to emphasize is like the collaboration aspect, and seeking out the perspectives of students, and looking for feedback into like how to improve, and like how to encourage like young people to strive for like growth and creating inclusive environment. Because I think that having this collaboration, and being willing to learn from each other, even though like I'm younger and might not know as much as my professor, I do have an experience that might be super relevant and super um like related to what they're trying to understand better. And I might not have the amount of experience in years, but I might have that specific niche experience that they might not have. And being open and willing to learn and to change the ways of learning to kind of adapt and accommodate for those with neurodivergence, or just people who have stressors in everyday life, and just kind of being able and willing to change your ways and like learn from each other, I think is like one of the biggest aspects to best support young people. I know that um, at my school we had a meeting recently, and there's this professor who I had started sharing some of my experiences that I'd have had with the disabilities office and with the CAPS office, and they were just so surprised, and they were like, we had no idea this was happening. And I was like, would you and some other professors like to kind of have a meeting and kind of just hear more about our experiences that we're having in college outside of the classroom? Like, and they were and just their receptivity to like hear, like we have a meeting coming up, but like just the fact that they're wanting to hear more about us, and they're showing that they care, and they're showing that they're willing to make changes to accommodate everyone the best that they can. And I think that just like that open line of communication and that seeking out of perspectives of the students, and looking for feedback is really like such a huge part of being successful, especially as it relates to academics and things of that nature.
Yeah, I love that you've been able to find both mentors and other folks in your life who can who you feel seen and heard by, and not just that, but also valued. I think it's part of what we've been talking about today, right? Of not flattening experience, whether that's through social media or what have you, like flattening folks, essentializing folks. Like everyone has their own humanity, their own identity, their own perspective, their own experiences. And one of the most vital things that a mentor can do is to recognize that in someone else, to ask the questions, to not think that they know everything because you're a young person and young people experience XYZ thing, but valuing you as a human being and showing that kind of care and support, I think, can go a really long way. So thank you for that reminder. I know we only have just a few minutes left. We might have time for one question from our audience. So I'm gonna pull one here. I'm gonna combine some. So what are some things that have had the greatest positive impact on your mental health as college students, or even as high school students, if you want to recall in the past? and how do you deal with that when the system is still so geared towards academic achievement and testing?
I think it really just comes down to self-awareness. And I mean, we've talked about this, but just, just trying to find time for boredom, and just really being with yourself. I know we've talked about this several times, but it really is so crucial. And whether that's through meditation or exercise or going on a walk. I know that personally I like to run, and so running is really that time where I can really focus on my relationship with myself, and it's kind of like it's just very cleansing, and it releases the natural endorphins. And I think that you really have to find what works for you, and remember to not do things as a sense of escapism, so running away from your thoughts, but really doing them with intention to focus on thinking about them in a constructive way, that allows you to just take a step back and think about how you're feeling. Because there is that pressure that you always need to be doing something. I've experienced imposter syndrome, in my first year of college, and that is really hard to deal with because you constantly feel like you're not doing enough, but you are, and everyone goes at their own pace. And so just taking that time for solitude is really crucial, I think.
Yeah, I also can speak a little bit to this, but I think that, you know, the system is not always oriented in the way we want it to be, and there is that unrealistic version of success. But a lot of the times, having those like teachers and professors who don't hold that ideal of success and find a way to support you in the best way that you need, by like whether it be like reaching out and checking in on you, and having that kind of support from the higher up of administrators and teachers and professors, and knowing that they're still there working to create an environment where you feel like um, you can be successful. And I think to what Keegan said also, like um, some things that I've done personally, when uh dealing with success in within society, is like being super deliberate about like my health and wellness, whether it be through exercise or nutrition, and always being willing to like learn more and new things to improve the way I'm currently living, and constantly striving to be the best version of myself as the way I see it, not the way that others are seeing or expect me to be.
Thank you so much, all. I know we are right at that hour mark and we could go on and on. I have loved listening in on you. Thank you so much, Jackie, for your wonderful moderation of that session. And thank you, panelists, for all of your incredible insights and knowledge and experiences you've shared with us in this last hour. I know it's been so valuable for me, and looking at the chat, it seems like everyone has felt that way as well. So thank you so much for being here. And thank you all for joining us, for your wonderful questions, for the engagement in the chat. I loved seeing all of that. Just a reminder that this session is recorded and will be emailed out to everyone within 1 week, along with those certificates of attendance, and some of the resources we talked about today. So thank you all so much. Thank you, Jackie and panelists, and everyone have a wonderful rest of your afternoon and great weekend.